Hi, everyone. Can I please start finding our seats, and can the candidates please join me on stage? Thank you so much. All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Zach Wiles. I am part of the UPG College Democrats, and I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight for our bipartisan candidate panel. This is more people than I expected, and it's really fascinating. So thank you all so much for being here. So this event is hosted by the UPG College Democrats, Students for a Democratic Society, and co-hosted by the UPG College Republicans. And we appreciate their collaboration in making tonight possible. This forum has also been widely promoted by WTF Can I Do Westmoreland and the Westmoreland County Republican Party, and I thank them both for promoting this. All candidates running for Pennsylvania State House and United States Congress in Westmoreland County were invited to participate in this forum, and we appreciate those who are here this evening. We believe that representation and especially engagement with college students is an essential part of public service. Tonight, we have the Democratic candidates running for Pennsylvania State House and US Congress. So in the 57th district, which is currently represented by Eric Nelson, we have the Democratic candidate Rob Francis. The 59th district, currently represented by Leslie Rossi, we have Jordan Omler. In Pennsylvania's 12th congressional district, currently represented by Summer Lee, we have James Hayes. In Pennsylvania's 14th congressional district, represented by Guy Reschenthaler, we have Alan Woods. So at this time, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Isaac Stevens. Isaac is a senior at the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg, studying political science and Spanish, and currently serves as president of the Student Government Association. He also has experience in local government, having worked with both the borough of Swissvale and the city of Greensburg. Please join me in welcoming Isaac Stevens.
All right, thank you so much, Zach. So, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Isaac Stevens. I do serve as the president of the Student Government Association here at Pitt Greensburg, and I'll be serving as your moderator tonight. We'll be following a structured format with timed responses, and the order will rotate to ensure fairness. Each question may include a brief follow-up as time allows. I do ask that candidates keep their answers within the allotted time of around 60 to 90 seconds, give some leeway, of course, and that the audience remains respectful throughout the evening as well. There are QR codes on both sides of the podiums here. You can scan those to submit audience questions into the Google form. Those will be collected and reviewed for our segment later in the program before our final remarks. Tonight's discussion will be organized around 3 key topic areas that reflect some of the most pressing issues facing our communities in the county: economy and education, healthcare and social policy, and government ethics and public trust. So before we begin, I do want to invite each of our candidates to briefly introduce themselves. If you want to share your name, again, the office you are running for, and any opening statement that you'd like to share. So James, we'll start with you.
It's working.
So just hit that button and then, yeah, there we go.
Well, hello, thanks for having me. It's great to be back here. My nephew actually graduated from this campus. Well, it's got to be 10 or 15 years ago, so it's great to be back. My name is James Hayes, and I'm actually running as the Republican for Congressional District 12, running against Summer Lee. So I can give you a little bit about myself. I'm a native Pennsylvanian. My dad was actually a steel worker, which is a big thing in Pittsburgh, as all of you know. In fact, when I was in high school, the steelworkers gave me a scholarship that helped me go to school. So I ended up doing international economics at Georgetown, and I decided not to stop there. So I have a master's degree in public affairs from Princeton, an MBA in finance and accounting from the University of Chicago, and a doctor of business administration from from Case Western University. I have 5 kids. Sadly, my son, I lost my son some years ago. My wife and I have 4 daughters that we're all very proud of. My wife is originally from Mexico. I actually was living in Mexico as an expat for 3 years, and we met there, fell in love, and the rest is history. So we've been married now 30 years, which is really exciting. I've spent 30 years in industry and finance, so I'm not a politician. Although this is the second time I'm running against Summer Lee. I have 5 issues, which I assume we'll get into here. But my main message is I'm not running to be a TikTok star or a Facebook sensation, which it seems, unfortunately, that a lot of our representatives are these days. I'm running to represent the people of the 12th district and the people of Western Pennsylvania. And I hope that you'll give me a good listen and consider my positions, see how they align with yours, and consider voting for me in November. Thank you.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Francis. I am running for Pennsylvania State Representative for District 57. I have a background in human services mostly. I grew up in Westmoreland County. Moved away for a while to go to school at Edinburgh University. I got a degree in English and political science, fell into the human service field afterwards. I have been a youth counselor at a juvenile group home. This was in Erie County. It was very similar to Adelphi. From there, I became a sexual abuse and domestic violence counselor through PCADV. And then I moved back home, and now I manage a group home for individuals with autism. I am running because, frankly, I am 34 years old, and we are still talking about things that we were debating when I was 17 years old. And I'd like to know why. I think that a lot of our people are not heard. A lot of the people in power right now are not prioritizing what we face every single day. And I think that we need to get our priorities straight, however that is. I'm just very passionate about democracy. I'm very passionate about our Commonwealth, and I just really hope that we are all in this together, right?
Hello, my name is Alan Bradstock. I'm running for Congress PA 14, and I'm originally from Denora, Pennsylvania. Went to Ringgold High School, went to W&J College, studied accounting, played basketball, ROTC scholarship, had a chance to learn how to fly helicopters after I graduated from college. My first duty assignment was in Germany before, during, and after the wall coming down. It was a fascinating time to be over there. I'm a Desert Storm veteran. I spent 8 years total active duty Army. And after that, I came home, did some financial advising, got a job with KPMG as an auditor. I missed that sense of service, so I joined the FBI, and I spent 20 years in the FBI. The first third of my career was working public corruption and drug investigations along the Southwest border. And after 9/11, I got into counterterrorism. And I spent a lot of time in other agencies. I was at CIA headquarters for a while. I was at DEA Special Operations Division for a while. Had a chance to work out of our embassy in Ottawa, Canada, and had a great opportunity working with the Canadians, finishing my career working at national level with counterterrorism strategies. I'm running because I'm worried about the future for my kids and for the college students here at Pitt Greensburg. And I really we need to get back to find that common ground. You know, we have so many more things that unite us than divide us. The partisan divide has gotten too far, and I want to work together to try to actually solve problems and that are going to be enduring, and that means you have to have bipartisan legislation. So that's going to be a big part of my campaign, and I look forward to talking about the issues here the rest of this evening. Thank you.
I'm Jordan Almore. I'm running for Pennsylvania State House District 59. I was raised by a single mother. I was born and raised in Latrobe. I joined the military as soon as I could at the age of 17, and I spent 10 years as military police, wherein I did 2 tours in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom, and then I reclassed to infantry and did 6 years at that. And then as soon as my contract ended, instead of re-enlisting and getting the military retirement, I decided that we weren't doing enough for Ukraine. So I self-deployed, volunteered to go there, and did 1 year in their military. I'm running, I feel I have a lot in common with Mr. Bradstock, I hope you don't mind me saying so, because I also agree that the political shifts to the far right and far left have gotten a bit out of control, and I think that we need to return to the center. As Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And while I think that we need to cooperate with our Republican counterparts, I don't believe that we need to surrender to them. I had some time in the National Guard and Army Reserves, which gave me the opportunity to start my own business. I purchase abandoned properties, renovate them, modernize them, and then put them back on the market at what I believe are affordable prices. And it's slow going, but I feel it's important work. Anytime I get a property like that, as I'm deconstructing it, I make sure that anything that can be recycled is recycled, down to plastic, glass, cardboard, and I hope I'll get more opportunities to talk about that later. Thank you.
Thanks for all of those introductions. We're going to start with our first segment, which is a little bit of an icebreaker, just to make everybody feel comfortable, of course. So my first question for you all is, I think let's start with Alan. What is one word that you hope voters would associate you with? If you had to boil it all down.
Authentic.
All right.
Just one word, huh?
Yeah.
Fresh.
Mr. Hay, what about you?
Pragmatic.
Rob?
Integrity.
Okay, just one more round of that. That's pretty good. What does effective leadership mean to you all? Starting with Rob.
Effective leadership means to me taking the action steps that are necessary, even if they're not necessarily popular, but not doing so outside the confines of the law or your role in government.
The Army taught me that the foundations of leadership are character and competence. And so those are 2 essential elements to actually be a real leader, and ethics is actually part of a leader. And so I kind of reject the concept of ethical leadership because it should be baked into leadership.
The Army taught me the basics of leadership are loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. But I believe that being a good and effective leader is about bringing up the people around you and working towards a common goal.
Mr. Lees.
Yeah, I guess 30 years of industry and finance taught me that leadership is being able to marshal the resources you have available to rally a team to be able to get objectives done that benefit the community or your organization or whatever your objective is.
Great. Well, let's move into our first block here. So it's going to be about the economy and education. Our first question that I have for you all tonight is many people feel wages aren't keeping up with inflation. Are there any specific policies you would support at your level of government to ensure jobs in this region pay a livable wage? And how would you define livable for Pennsylvanians? Starting with Mr. Hayes.
Sure. So I believe that, a lot of people talk about a minimum wage, but I believe that we have some resources here in Western Pennsylvania that are really unique to our area that we can leverage to build prosperity and really well-paying jobs. And that primarily is energy and technology. So we have the 4th largest natural gas reserves in the world. We have more natural gas than Saudi Arabia's oil. We need to leverage that. And by leveraging that, we create jobs not only in that industry, but in the industries that benefit from that industry. So things like petrochemicals, things like even artificial intelligence that need energy as a main input. And by raising the demand for labor, by creating this really dynamic labor force, then we will raise wages, we'll raise prosperity, we'll raise the quality of life for everybody because the employers won't have any option except to pay better wages in that sort of dynamic market.
And we can just go down the line as well.
I mean, I think we've been having the raise the minimum wage debate for a very long time, to the point we're still talking about $15 an hour, but like by the MIT minimum wage calculator, for that to keep up with inflation in Western Pennsylvania, it need to be about $18 now. That's how long we've been arguing about that. And I think building up stable job force, not only in labor, but in all industries, we need to diversify because some people just don't want to do that. Like some people don't want to go manufacture steel all the time. But either way, whether you're flipping burgers or manufacturing steel or teaching in the classroom, you deserve to live like with a bare minimum on one salary. That was the whole point of minimum wage in the first place. So in the state assembly, yeah, I think we need to raise it. It's been stuck at $7.25 for a very long time. 2009 wasn't even double digits in the 2000s yet. That's way too long. So that would be my top priority for addressing that. And then we can worry about getting the job situation figured out. We got to pay people first.
Well, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I do believe that the minimum wage raising to at the minimum of 15 is a no-brainer. But also we need to focus more on really the good jobs that are going to pay those wages. And I'm just hearing more and more, I believe that some of those that are going to be AI proof are going to be the building trades type of things in the unions. And so the apprenticeships are what we need to focus on. And we also need to be able to make sure that we have the work, because I'm not only pro worker, but I'm going to be pro work. We got to do a little better job with permitting so that we actually can build things efficiently and effectively and not have the cost overruns that happen so frequently. And I saw that in the federal government and the procurement. Arena needs to be streamlined so that we can get things done faster and more effectively, and then actually build big things like we used to be able to do.
So a living wage is an amount of money that any employer would have to offer so that any employee would be able to live at the bare necessary level of survival. It may not be luxurious or comfortable, but so that people aren't starving and so that people can get the care that they need if they were to have a health emergency. I also agree that raising the minimum wage would be a fast solution to this, but I also feel we need to be aware of the potential consequences of that in regards to the economy. I think a better way to do it, and this is far above the state level, but I like to keep an eye on the big picture, is also raising the value of the US dollar. If we can do that, then everything will get better for everyone. I see countries in the world where, you know, $1 is worth 46 of their currency or even 10,000 of their currency, and you can't get a loaf of bread without having to bring a wheelbarrow to the grocery store. That's an exaggeration, obviously, but in the history, things like that have happened. But I think I'm gonna stop right there.
All right, well, thank you. Yes. So keeping with this theme of economy and education, I want to move into kind of thinking about our schools in Pennsylvania. Schools across Pennsylvania are facing teacher shortages and increased burnout. Are there any concrete steps you would take in your role to recruit and retain teachers in both rural and suburban districts? And start with Jordan this time.
I believe, from what I've seen in my experience, those responsibilities fall on the school boards to generate contracts for the teachers. And they can certainly come to the representatives for assistance in any way. But I feel like that's something that's handled on the local level, and I wouldn't want to get too deep into that and step on their toes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jordan that from a federal level, as far as recruiting teachers, I'm not sure what I would be able to do to improve that. I think that just making sure that we have a Department of Education is going to be important. So we need that so that we can make sure that the programs that are there for especially disabled or just folks that need some additional help, we need to make sure that we're ensuring that our most disadvantaged folks have the same opportunities regardless of where you live in the country. So definitely we got to focus on the Department of Education, getting it back up and running effectively. But as far as recruiting, I don't have a specific proposal on that.
So I went to a state school that specialized for a very long time in certifying teachers. And I saw in my time there a lot of people that wanted to be teachers that stopped being teachers because the reoccurring theme was the schools have no support. Governor Shapiro's most recent bill just allocated several $billion to help schools get more counseling support, get more teacher support. But what does that mean? You need to support them. You need to make people want to feel safe in the classroom again. Teachers aren't feeling safe. The students aren't feeling safe. The students aren't getting adequate home life attention. So it's coming out in the class. Like we hear all these things all the time. So we need to make them feel supported. We need to make sure our funds are allocated properly and not just throw random numbers and random like band-aids on things. We need to look at these problems. Do I know what that looks like right now in this moment? I don't. But I would absolutely make that a priority to look into, and we will certainly look into what we can do to get teachers recruited. But I think making them feel safe and wanting to teach is a good step.
So I'm going to be obnoxious. I'm going to be obnoxious and say I think that's the wrong question because the purpose of schools isn't to keep teachers employed. It's to get great outcomes for students and for students to have a level of education that can take this country forward. And I think the way you do that is with school choice. I think that by creating competition among schools, that you will focus on outcomes because parents will go to the organizations that give their students the best outcomes. And that will raise the level of competition among schools, and all schools will get better and the outcomes will be better. I think it would have made a difference in my life. I went to a very not very good school, and I think they lovingly call now the hood. And when I look at the trajectory of my life, it wasn't going in a good direction. My parents had the wherewithal. My dad was, he had a good job as a steel worker. He was able to move us to a suburban school that was much better, and we know the difference. But I like to say, if we hadn't moved out of that neighborhood, that right now I could be the smartest criminal in all of Western Pennsylvania, maybe in all of Pennsylvania. So I think that you shouldn't, a person's future should not be decided by their zip code, and the way to ensure that is to have the money follow the school, have the money follow the children, and let the parents and the children collectively decide which program is best for them.
All right, thank you. So keeping with this theme of education, my final question for this block. Education funding and guidance at both the federal and state levels have shifted in recent years. How do you think government should respond at your level to ensure schools remain stable, equitable, and fully funded? We had alluded to this before with shifts in the education department at the federal level, especially in these under-resourced communities. Starting with Mr. Hayes.
Well, I kind of answered that. I believe that the money should follow the student. So that means that somebody that's living up in the Hill District, if they wanted to go to Winchester Thurston, which is, thanks be to God, that's where my kids were able to go, that they would have some money allocated. My kids actually got a partial scholarship for Winchester Thurston, so Winchester Thurston I know would give the other half, and they could have a great education. But right now, a person in the Hill District doesn't have that opportunity. If you let the money follow the child, they would be able to choose the best outcome for them. And we keep throwing money at education, and yet over the last 20 years, our results, our test results have absolutely declined. So it's not a question of money; it's a question of competition. It's a question of will, and it's a question of giving everyone the right opportunity.
I think that when we put competition into terms of education, that drives people away from communities and into other communities, and that is not going to be what makes school districts safe. I think that equity doesn't look like this school gets $100 and this school gets $100 and this school gets $100. Does this school need $200? Well, this one only needs 100. This one only needs like 50. That's equity. This is making sure the schools get the resources they need, and you only do that by listening to the community that the school is in. And I think Alan had a good point with needing a strong Department of Education, and that's where it's all going to come from. The money is there. We just need to prioritize it correctly. We need to make sure that schools are getting the funding they need, not the funding we think they need.
I believe that we need to make sure that there's a baseline for every school, regardless of the zip code that you live, and also that the standards are the same. And we really need to make sure, I believe that schools are one of those primary things that are the heart of the community. That's what you remember so much about your youth. And one of my primary focuses moving forward is revitalizing, especially the downtowns and the small towns like my hometown of Denora. And it's sad to see all the schools either demolished or not being used at all. So we need to make sure that the schools are effectively resourced, and then also that they're used in maximal ways that can benefit the communities, because what I'm seeing in Denora is the youth have nowhere to go. And so when they're idle youth, bad things happen. So you have to have those local schools that actually are open when they need to be open, so that kids can go to programs after school and be involved with sports and all the activities. And that can't be outsourced, and you can't do that online. And that's why our communities are fraying, because of things like that. And we've got to build back that sense of community, and the schools are at the heart of that.
Yeah, I think that every school should be looked at individually, and the ones, I'm sure there are some that are achieving and overachieving, and maybe they could use a little bit of extra funding to help them get some of the things they want. But I think that as long as there's one school that is struggling, that we should focus on bringing those low producing schools up to baseline with all the others before we just give money across the board to every school. I also understand that the state has unfunded mandates, so they're forcing the schools to abide by certain rules, otherwise they lose their federal funding. And oftentimes the schools struggle to come up with the funds to enact these programs that are demanded by the state. So I think that could be looked at and revised. I do believe, I kind of agree with my Republican friend here that the parents and students should have a choice what school they want to go to, but I don't think that that burden should be on the school to provide the transportation and the extra time that takes. I think that should be on the parents. If they decide they want to live in a different community but go to a different school, that they should find a way to fund that for themselves. And that's just freedom of choice, because yeah, your zip code shouldn't determine your education in all cases.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm gonna have a little bit of a follow-up to that. A few of you had talked about a baseline to the educational system. So as we've seen problems with our educational system, do you think that the improvements should come more at the federal level or more at the state level? And starting with you, Jordan.
I think that, I mean, it can even start at the local level. We have partners in education programs. There are lots of foundations and charities that like to give to the schools. And if you happen to live in a community where that's abundant, that's amazing and wonderful. If the local municipality can't meet that bar, then it can go higher to the state. If the state can look at its budget and reallocate funds, then that's wonderful. And if we can't, then we can ask the Fed for assistance and hopefully they provide. Everyone?
Yeah, I'm gonna go down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that we need to have some federal baseline guidance, but I also believe that it shouldn't be just on a couple of things, because what happened was everybody taught to the test. It has to be something that's bigger and broader, where people can actually perhaps critically think would be a more important skill that we need to focus on moving forward, especially as AI moves forward and online and misinformation. So we've got to be able to make sure they can think, not just have rote memory. So I think it's a very different type of standard so that people can actually function in the new world that we're in.
Yeah, I think standardized testing is not a good baseline detector. I mean, you can learn how to beat a standardized test. It is, I would say it's the state's level to determine like what are we doing with these funds for the education here? The federal government obviously has a level to play in that too, and I think Jordan hit on that a good bit, where if the state can't do, the federal government steps in. But we do have this obligation as a state government to make sure our citizens and the people in our state are getting a proper education. That kind of goes into the state's rights. And then if we do need more funding, we need more guidelines from the federal government, I'm okay with that. We just need to make sure that the outcome is productivity of the student, not profitability for the school or individual people.
Yeah, so I would echo that. I think that, at a national level, we have a national need to have students that have a certain level of capability if we're going to be driving the country forward. So I think that the federal government does have a role to play in terms, I think, of setting guidelines, like what do we want the outcomes to be for students? But at the day-to-day level, schools are such a part of the community. They're such it's such a community organization. And I would say that the local, it should start at the local level. The local level, like we do today, the school boards, I think they need to have a lot of say over what happens in the school, what is in some way taught in the school, what the guidelines will be for conduct in the school, because that can vary. Like students in New York are going to be a lot different than students in Mississippi. So I think those local entities need to have a say in how the schools are conducted. And then the state can play a role in terms of implementing the federal guidelines. Like how is that going to be at the state? And then there are certain state things you want to learn about the state that maybe like in Pennsylvania, we want to learn about the importance of Philadelphia, which they might not care in Mississippi. So there's a role for everyone to play. I think in terms of it's kind of like government. The local government is the government that touches you the most, and so they need to have a say in like the day-to-day guidelines and a lot of the conduct of the school. And I think that the federal government has more of a strategic say in what the outcome should be in a way that drives the productivity and the prosperity of the country forward.
Thank you so much. So before we move on to our next segment, I just do want to remind you that we have these QR codes. If anyone's interested in any questions for our candidates, they can be on any topic. And our lovely Zach Wiles here can assist you with that if you need help with QR codes as well. So moving on to our second block, this is going to be focused more on healthcare and social policy, shifting gears a little bit. The first question I have for you all is a little broad. Do you believe healthcare is a right or a privilege? And how should that belief shape policy decisions at your level of government? Let's start with Rob.
Healthcare is a right, and it is being treated like a privilege. But in a country and a commonwealth that can afford to provide it for everybody, it is absolutely a right. We have a Medicaid system in Pennsylvania right now. Why can't we cover people from womb to tomb? Like, we are already paying into it. Everyone in this room is paying into it. Why can't we access it unless we're in a dire situation? We lose our job, or we make too much money here, but not enough money for this. So we kind of maybe get something. That's ridiculous. We are well past that. This is 2026. We have the money, we have the resources, we have the technology, we have the information. It is absolutely a human right at this point.
Direction. James, you best.
Yeah, so, maybe we're not surprised, but I'm gonna come down on the side that it's a privilege, but I think it's a privilege that in a country as rich as ours should be accessible to a lot of people. So I mean, I've had the benefit of traveling all over the world, seeing all sorts of different economies, and I will tell you that there are a lot of places that don't have access to even basic healthcare. Access to basic healthcare should not be an issue here. It's not to me, it's not a right, like, the right to vote, or or like a basic human need, like that the World Bank would talk about. But it is something that in a developed society like ours, in a rich society like ours, should be more accessible to more people. I know a lot of people in my party fought the ACA. I actually, as currently a self-employed person, I actually think it provides a lot of benefits. So if you want to be a small business person, or you want to be an entrepreneur, it actually frees you from having to work for an employer where you're going to work there only because that might be a big driver to why you work there, is to get health care. So I think that the programs that came about in the ACA allow people like me to make a lifestyle change that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do. I might have been I'll use a slave to a corporate environment without something like access to healthcare. So I guess in summary, yes, I believe it's a privilege, but I believe in a country like ours, it's a privilege that should be accessible to a lot of people.
I believe that healthcare is a right. I also know that our healthcare system is the least efficient in the world by far, because we spend so much more per capita than anybody else in the world, yet we don't cover everybody, and our life expectancy is the lowest of any industrialized country. And so that is shocking to me, and the auditor and accountant in me, it kind of blows my mind. How could we have such an inefficient system? So I am going to make sure that everything that I focus on is one of my key priorities, is how do we get to the right system? Because we can save a lot of money and cover people and have a much better outcome. It's going to be a hard transition, and some people are going to have to take a haircut here and there, but those special interests are still going to do well. And there's a lot of things that we can do to make it better and make sure that everybody has it.
I also believe that healthcare is a right, but I feel like it's being treated like a privilege, and it's for those of us who are privileged enough to have tens of thousands spare to be able to go handle any treatment you may need. I'm not a super wealthy individual. I am afraid of going to the hospital. If something were to happen to me, I believe that that bill would be crushing, especially now. They're changing the rules. There used to be states where even if you had medical debt, it didn't affect your credit score. And now they're taking that away because money is more important to certain administrations than human suffering. And I think that should change. I came across an interesting prospect this week, Medicaid for all, but not to force everyone to be on it, have it as an option. And it would be based off of what you can afford. Like, we have government run housing, it's based off of what you can afford. It'd be something like that. And I'd be very interested in looking deeper into that and supporting them.
This is still in our second block here, but this is a very different question focusing on a much different issue. So how do you all think state and local governments, in coordination with federal authorities, balance immigration enforcement with maintaining trust and safety in communities? Jordan, if you'd like to start.
Well, so the big issue I think that's on everyone's minds today is ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and how we cooperate with them, or if we should cooperate with them. And there is a balance. I don't believe that local law enforcement should be beholden to working with federal law enforcement if it's not necessary, because they're the local police are the ones that you're going to deal with the most as a citizen. And so you want to be able to look up to those people and know that they're going to protect and serve you, and not just hand you over to the authorities because you talk a certain way or perhaps look a certain way. On the other hand, I think that the federal enforcement agencies should be doing a more proper investigative job, and instead of just casting a wide net and pulling people off the streets, that they should target the specific individuals that they need to target, because there may be some violent criminals in the area and nobody wants that. But I don't think we should be labeling every potential immigrant or people who are waiting on their citizenship status as criminals, because being in this country illegal is not it's not a criminal act, it's a civil act, and it's a civil infraction. And so we should treat it as such and not so aggressively.
Like Jordan, if there's somebody that's a violent criminal, then they should work together because we don't want them on our streets. But if not, then let's let our regular state and local law enforcement, even other federal law enforcement, focus on their true jobs. I know that the FBI counterterrorism division folks are being pulled off of that work in order to do basic immigration work, and that is not making us safer. So it really depends. It's very small times that we should do that coordination, but otherwise, let's just focus on the most important things that are actually going to protect us.
Cooperating with law enforcement is not the same thing as cooperating with lawless cruelty. So do I support federal and local state governments working together to fix whatever immigration problems we have? Sure. Do I agree with warrantless arrest by mass goons busting down doors and pulling people out of cars? Absolutely not. I'm never going to say that we should agree to comply with that ever. But we do have immigration laws that are not felonies that are punishable by getting shot or getting detained. And so when we are talking about cooperating, we need to be very clear with what we are cooperating with. Because I will not cooperate on any level, personal or otherwise, with somebody that's going to bust down my neighbor's door and pull them out in the middle of the night. But then the Bill of Rights exists still, whether they want to believe it or not. And if we are having people come in here, like during the Obama administration, they wore windbreakers. You saw their face. They had badges, and they had almost 3 times the amount of legal deportations as the current administration does. It is about cruelty. Government from the federal, state, local, whatever. But we still have to follow the law. What is the law? We have to make sure we know that. And we have to make sure we understand the role of federal governments in states that they come into. The roles of state and local law enforcement, like Alan said, are really the ones to be controlling that in their areas and communities. We can welcome the federal government in, but if we don't want them here, they have no place here. This is our Commonwealth. And if they are going to come in here and attack our citizens, I would stand against that at every turn.
Well, I'm so glad I came today, because otherwise you just hear the same boring thing all the time. I'm going to definitely give a different perspective. So I don't think you get to choose which laws you follow. The laws are the laws. When people cross the border illegally, they have broken the law. You know, we talk about illegal aliens. Oh, you can't be illegal. Well, grammatically, that's true, because they're not illegal aliens. That was a euphemism that people came up with in the 70s, because they're actually criminal aliens in the 70s. They're criminals when they cross the border, because it's breaking the law.
No, they are not criminals.
They are criminals. It's,
I ask that we save the audience discussions until after Mr. Hayes is finished speaking.
yes, so they are criminals because they broke the law. There is federal statutes that prevent you from, that say you shouldn't cross the border without crossing at a point of entry. So they've broken the law, and when we go against ICE, we go against law enforcement. And ICE is upholding the law. They are allowed to go into houses. They don't need a judicial warrant. They only need an administrative warrant according to our immigration law. So, I suggest that you all look at what the law actually says, what our immigration law actually says. ICE is not just running out and doing random sweeps. They know who they're going after. They have the data. They have the intelligence. They know who they're going after. They are using the rights that they have under our immigration law to uphold our laws. And there are 20 million people that came across unvetted in the last 4 years. So ICE enforcement is counterterrorism enforcement. That's why there are people from counterterrorism that are out helping ICE, because we don't know who the heck in the 20 million people that are out there are actual terrorists, are sleeper cells, maybe from Iran. Well, I'm not going to get into that.
Why? ICE enforcing the law by shooting in the back?
Well, I'm not going to get into that because
May I have one more sentence?
I think this is a lively topic. Yeah, let's continue this, Jordan.
As I said earlier, I was in Afghanistan, and during that time, I performed law enforcement operations in that country, and that involved surrounding the houses of people who we knew were bad because we'd been doing intelligence work on them for a long time. I don't want to specify how long, but and then we would go in and we would get the one person. If there's anyone else in the house, we would detain them. We wouldn't, damage them overly much. And I feel that our rules of engagement, no, I know it's a fact. Our rules of engagement as soldiers in a foreign war zone were stricter than they seem to be for ICE in this current day and age. And that's something for Bradstock because he's running for U.S. Congress. It's not something I can do at a state level, but it is something I'm very passionate about. And I agree with Rob Francis.
Move on. We have a lot to cover. So we're going to get into our third block of questioning here, which is more focused on government ethics and public trust. So the one question I want to ask from here, and then I would like to get to some audience questions because we have a lot of really great questions that you all submitted. So first, outside spending and elections has increased significantly. How would you ensure that your decisions at your level of government serve the public interest and not wealthy donors or outside groups? Starting with Alan, you have the mic.
Well, I will not accept any corporate PAC money, so that's one thing for sure. And, when I look at just the damage that the Citizens United case has inflicted upon us, it's scary for democracy with all the dark money and how much money is now involved in politics. And it's important that we figure out how to counter that. I am really worried that there's been such a big increase in the amount of that dark money, and it's not helpful for democracy, and it just devalues every other individual in our society because of that attention that it gathers. So I'll do everything I can in Congress, and hopefully we can work towards an amendment to overturn the damage of the Citizens United case.
I mean, I agree completely on Citizens United. Unfortunately, at the state level, I would have little control over that. I also do not and would not take corporate PAC money. I do think this flow of mega billionaire donors and dark money and all these corporate PACs, corporations are not people too. They are just not. And if they are, they need to be taxed like people are. And so the billionaires too, we need to get that money out of here. What can I do at the state level? I could probably, again, outlaw those corporate PACs. I don't want to say that, but I kind of do. I don't think we should have corporate PACs. I think I could try to outlaw that. That's something I would do. I don't think big money has any place to be in politics. Politics is of the people, by the people, for the people, and big money billionaires and corporations are not people.
Well, so I was actually hoping that one of the QR codes you had was the one that goes to my donation page, but I don't think that was one of them. And I don't think I would get much out of this crowd anyway. But look, so the way I did, are you going to get rid of corporate PACs? The reason corporate PACs is because corporations cannot give money. So what they do is they create these PACs and they collect money from their employees, and then representing their employees, this is how it works. Representing their employees, they make donations to candidates that align with their interests. So me personally, I won't take money from anyone that I don't agree with. That I would feel like I was at odds or going against what I believe in if I voted for their interest, because I don't actually believe what they believe in. So like, a big one for me is pharma. I think pharma is really kind of vicious and nasty and notorious and corrupt. So I won't take money from pharma because I think they push drugs on us that we really don't need. But I'm a supporter of the energy industry. So would I take money from the energy industry? I would. It hasn't been an issue. If you know anyone in the energy industry that wants to donate to my campaign, please let them know. But no, I think the best way to not have a conflict of interest is not to take money from people that you're in conflict with, and that's it.
As a state rep, it's a little bit different. We are prohibited from taking money from businesses or corporations. We can only accept donations from individuals. But let's say that, they could, that it was legal, that the law changed tomorrow, something like that. I would happily take as much money as they would want to give me, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do the things that they want me to do. I mean, it's their decision to give me the money, and it's my decision, and more importantly, my constituents' decisions to decide what to do with that money. Because even though I'm running as a Democrat, I want to represent as many people in the district as possible, and I understand that it's a bit optimistic because you can't make all the people happy all the time. But I'm not going to just vote for something because certain wealthy or prominent individuals in the community say that that's what we need to do. I understand it's going to create some hardships for me down the road, but I just want everyone to know that it's the people's choice and the people's voice.
All right, thank you much. So I am going to move on to audience questions, just so we have plenty of time for that as well. And I do want to jump back to the immigration topic, because that is something that we clearly have a lot of questions about, and some further discussions are needed on that. So one of our questions from the audience, if I can find it right here. Excuse me, I am reading from my phone. One moment. All right, so this audience member asks, ProPublica found that more than 170 US citizens have been held by immigration agents. How do you believe we should handle that issue? Starting with Jordan, since you have the mic.
I think with any agency, when, let's say, there were mistakes were made, that they should be not only remediated as soon as possible, but also some sort of fine or punishment should be placed on, well, a fine on the agency, and then a punish on the agents or the investigators responsible for that bad intelligence or bad actions, whether that's a suspension for a week or something like that.
All right, now.
Well, I would say that we need some improved training. I think there's a lot of areas in ICE and in immigration enforcement that needs a lot of training just in how to conduct themselves in a professional manner. And anytime that they do arrest somebody that's a US citizen, figure out why that happened so that they can fix the problem. And also just, how to treat people respectfully. That was one of the things that I learned in the FBI is regardless of who they were, they could be a hardened criminal or murderer, that when we were arresting them, we treated them with respect, just like anybody else. And I think that all law enforcement should do that.
Could you repeat the question just so I make sure I'm focused on?
Yes. So ProPublica found that more than 170 US citizens have been held by immigration agents. How do you believe we should handle that issue?
Just make sure I have the number right. Okay, so I think that is 170 times that the government needs to admit that they were wrong and made a mega mistake. And then that's a good first start. And then I think, again, fines to those agencies and audit, whatever it may be, maybe a congressional hearing. And I think reparations to that person and their family, absolutely.
I actually agree with that. I think that if the government makes a mistake, that there should be a full apology from whoever the Secretary of Homeland Security ends up being. And that if, whatever costs were incurred and inconvenience was suffered by the individual or family, that they should be compensated by that agency.
Excuse me if I pop around on topics here. So our next question is back to healthcare. So this audience member asks, healthcare is currently treated as a privilege, but should be a right. Do you have any thoughts as to how one can make the health system more equitable? Parentheses, once again, urban and rural areas are marginalized. Mr. Hayes, would you like to start?
Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, of course. This audience member thinks that healthcare is currently treated as a privilege, but should be a right. Do you have any thoughts as to how one could make the health system more equitable? For example, for marginalized communities in rural areas?
Yeah, so I think that there was the possibility for the ACA to broaden the access to healthcare and to make it more equitable. I think that we need to take another look at the subsidies and make them income-based or wealth-based, so that it's progressive in the same way that our SNAP benefits or some of our other safety net programs are, so that poor people can have access to healthcare through something like the ACA.
Speaking specifically to rural areas and marginalized communities, transport is constantly an issue. Yeah, we have public transport, but if it doesn't run when and where and how people need, it's not effective. I've definitely been to some hospitals and clinics that despite regulations, you couldn't get a wheelchair in there. Or if somebody has ambulatory issues or if they need an aid with them, that ain't happening. So I think that one of the ways we increase access is by looking at what communities are not being served that could or should be being served and reallocate funds to those areas so that we can actually give them the healthcare they need, how they need it. Again, that's the key point here, is how do they need it? It's not going to be a one size fixes all thing. It's going to have to be a statewide examination of everything. And that's why we have committees. That's why we have different state departments. But I think starting with the accessibility in terms of transport and actually getting people able to be in the buildings is a big first step.
Well, the first step is having universal coverage, and then everybody has the insurance. So you start with that. And then the second is that we've got to get a little more efficient and effective in the rural areas of how we have access to that care. So, we're going to have to use some technology and, make sure that we have people in the right places so that people don't have to travel quite as far. And there's a way to do that if you have universal coverage, and it'll be a much more efficient system overall.
Yeah, it seems like that Medicaid for all proposal I was talking about earlier would be a perfect solution to that, and as perfect as it can be. And also the transportation. If I get elected, I'm so looking forward to talking with the Transit Authority on expanding their routes and availability.
Wow. So, excuse me. Another question I'd like to ask you all is more about differences you see between you and others. So it's a two-part question. The first part is, what do you think is the biggest difference between you and your opponents? The second part to that question is, what do you think is the biggest difference between you and your party? So difference to your opponents, different to your party. Starting with Jordan, since you have the mic.
I could speak to my opponents. I might have to think a bit more about the party, what you mean by that. My district is one of the few in the state which is going to have a primary. My opponent being Lisa Gephardt is a lifelong Democrat. And that's where we differ the most. I was a Republican until recently, and I realized things were getting so strange on that side of the aisle. I wanted to distance myself from it. So yeah, I'm definitely more moderate. I believe that we need to work together to make things better for all people, not just Democrats, not just Republicans. I think we need to stop the political punishment that's going on because we're not enemies, or we don't need to be anyway. And then if I make it to the general election, the biggest difference between me and my opponent there, Leslie Rossi, is that she is full on MAGA and she can't deny it. She has a shrine to Trump in Youngstown, and I do not. So. And then the difference between me and my party.
Yeah, sure. So this audience member is just curious if you see any differences between you and the Democratic Party in any ways. You can also say no.
Well, I mean, having been a soldier for so long, I can see the usefulness for the Second Amendment and firearms in particular. I don't think, we should have rocket launchers on the streets, but it's something I'd be willing to talk with other representatives and the government about.
I said Mr. Bradstock.
As far as the differences between me and Guy Rethenshaw, I mean, the first thing is that I'll actually be seen in the district. And that's because I'm from the district, right? I grew up in the district. I have deep roots in the district. I keep coming back to the district. And because he never comes around, that just tells me that he doesn't care. And basically, I just care about the district. So that's the first thing. And also that, I'm going to want to work together with Republicans in trying to just build some bipartisan legislation. That's going to be a big part of it as well. And I actually have a career of solving problems in a non-ideological way. And so I can use all that experience when I get to Congress. The difference between me and the party, I would say one is that I have an all the above energy policy. So I do not reject fossil fuels because they do fuel a lot of very good jobs in the district, and it's a lot of very good union jobs. So that's probably one.
How am I different from my opponent? I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me is Eric Nelson has been in office for 8 years, and I have never been in office. So I am not a career politician. And how do I differ the most from my party? Oh, I found a backbone. Oh, how do I differ from my party? I can call it out. I know we screwed up, and we do screw up, and I'm not afraid to say that. It doesn't mean that we have to live in the screw up. We can fix it, but that's the problem. We don't fix our problems.
Yeah, so how do I differ from my opponent? That was pretty easy. So, I support law enforcement. I want control of the border. I want to support our energy industry. I support Israel. So, we're about 180 degrees, between me and Summer Lee. In fact, I thought about changing my name. Instead of being Summer, I'd be Winter, maybe Winter Hayes, but my wife didn't like it, so I didn't do it. But in terms of my party, a lot of my party, they think that we need to be policemen of the world and get into forever wars. I'm not a forever war person. I think that I'm into defense. Like we need to make sure that we have a strong defense. But I don't think we are the people to solve everybody's problems.
So I do want to ask, unfortunately, just one more audience question before we move to our closing statements, as we are running out of time this evening. I'm sure many of our candidates would love to speak to you all afterwards if anyone is interested in sticking around. So our last kind of audience question here is circling back to jobs, and we heard a little bit about labor and labor unions. So this audience member is curious, labor unions have been largely hollowed out in the late 20th and early 21st century. Do you find the death of unions to be an issue, and how would you address that problem? Starting with Mr. Hayes.
I actually think the death of unions is a huge issue. So I came out of corporate America, and I know that the inordinate difference between the power between the corporation and an individual worker. And so the only way you can counter that is to have really strong unions. And so I've always worked where we treated the unions with respect. We viewed the unions as partners. So whether it's the IBEW, the Communications Workers of America, the steel workers, I mean, they all have training programs. They're actually looking out for the good of the worker. They're trying to ensure that there are good working conditions, and all those things are things that I think benefit the worker and give purpose to the union. I know that without the steel workers, that my dad's conditions at work would have been much different. So I really respect what the unions have done. I support the unions. I want to see stronger unions in America.
Really though, like I support unions. I think gutting of unions is a major problem. I mean, I worked in the corporate sector many times. I think, we've all heard that you talk about unionizing, you're fired. But why? Like it's to protect you from these big corporate monsters. That's literally the point of unions. And if they're voluntary, if they're not making people join them, like I'm all about that, and because it's just more insurance for a worker. It helps make sure that your work environment is safe, physically and emotionally. It makes sure that you're not getting harassed. It makes sure that you're not fired unjustly. It makes sure that your benefits are being paid out accurately. So yeah, I'm very pro-union, and I think the deterioration of unions is a major problem with the unchecked capitalism in this country.
Yes, the unions have been hollowed out. The unions were the backbone of the communities throughout our district. When I look at the Denora Small Museum and I see those awesome pictures of the union members and how big they were and the picnics and everything, they were the backbone of the community. I was at the United Mine Workers of Association yesterday and just seeing the photos around the different mines and how they were the backbones of those communities. So, that was when the district was strong, and we need to get back to that. And they just represent good jobs with good benefits, and it just is focused on working families, and that's at the heart of my campaign.
Yeah, definitely, I seem to be in agreement that unions are good and that they're dissolving away is bad. I believe there's a second part to that question, am I correct? Was it what can we do to strengthen them?
So yes, thank you. Do you find the death of unions to be an issue, and how would you address that problem?
How to address it? Means to bring back unions strength, you'd have to bring back workforce strength. To bring back workforce strength, you'd have to bring back livable wage. To bring back livable wage, you have to find funding for it. And I think one of the ways we could do it, if I could just slide it in real quick, is that millionaires and billionaires, they are people. That's one of the few things I disagree with Mr. Francis on. But they are people who have been wealth hoarding for a very long time. And even if we were to tax them at post-World War II rates of 90%, that's only for new money coming in. Everything they have in the bank, they're going to be able to keep. They can still afford that new yacht this year or private jet to wherever, hopefully no inconspicuous islands. But yeah, and then once we tax the millionaires and billionaires just a little bit more, not 90%, then we can move the tax burden off of the lower income people. And I would say up to, I'd be happy with anyone not making $1 million on their own should have the graduated tax rate. And we'll go from there. It won't be fixed overnight, but it's a great start.
No, thank you all. So we are going to move into our closing statements right now. Starting with Alan, if you'd like to take 2-3 minutes, anything you'd like to say to the audience?
Sure, yeah, and I think just to supplement my union answer is the next part of it is you have to be pro-work. And so that's where we have to be able to build big things. And so that's where we do have to make some shifts and some regulations in order to actually get things done. And we still need to have clean air, clean water, and that can't go too far, but we got to be able to do better with that. The last thing I really want to say is just get involved, especially the young folks here from the college. Get involved. I don't care if you're for me or against me, but get involved in democracy. Let's talk to each other. The more that we talk to each other and do it in a civil way, we're going to be better as a country. We absolutely have got to figure out a way to come together, because the competing 4-year cycle of executive orders is not going to work. It's bad for business. It's horrible for government. You don't know how bad it is, after 20 years of dealing with those swings, even when the government doesn't shut down, because we don't have regular order because of this chaos, it's just bad. We're going to continue on this bad glide slope of getting further and further behind China. You just look at some of the biggest technological things and the forward-looking things that the United States used to dominate. We now are being crushed by China because they're actually investing and they're doing things and looking forward. So the only way that we can turn it around is to work together. That's a big part of it. And I hope you want to get involved in my campaign. And so please sign up, get involved. If you're worried about the world these days, and I know a lot of you are, get involved. You'll feel better because you'll be feeling agency. You'll be making a difference, whether it's with WTF protests or any other organization. Get involved and you'll feel better about being part of democracy.
Hi. Yeah, I kind of want to echo Alan in that, in saying like democracy is very important. Get involved. It is never bad for democracy when there are more names on the ballot and more choices for people when they show up. The problem is people don't show up all the time. So show up. You're the people. Like, you are the people. We are the people. We have to show up. We can sit here and complain about, oh, things suck and this is terrible and nobody does anything. They're the people that have to do something. Like, we have to get out there. We have to do that stuff. So if we're going to sit here and complain that nobody in government is doing their job, quit electing them. Go, find some other people to run yourself. Get out there. Find something to do with that energy. Let me ask you a question. Anyone feel okay today? No, yeah. So really, when's the last time you woke up and you felt safe all day? You didn't think, oh, thank God I didn't get sick today because I can't afford that. We've all been there. That's what I want to fix, because I'm sick of sitting at home complaining about it. I'm sick of seeing people I love suffer. I'm sick of suffering myself. I'm sick of waking up every morning wondering, oh crap, what happened in my country today? We need the change. So be the change. We can have a government of the people, by the people, for the people, the way it was intended to be. But the people need to show up. And the people need to do what the people do and get the bad people out and the right people in. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. Because there is another election a couple years after that. We can try again. But if we don't try, nothing changes. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It is not a done deal. It needs constant upkeep. It can kill itself like that. So show up. Everyone here tonight, thank you. And also, get out there, get involved. If me, just get involved.
What he said. Yeah, so thanks for having me here tonight. I have, 5 points that I'm running on, really just trying to represent the people of Western Pennsylvania, safe communities, jobs and prosperity by developing our energy industry, control of the border, again, back to safety. Like I said, I'm an advocate of school choice. I want to see great outcomes with strong parent involvement in the schools. And I want to support our allies, especially Israel, who lately has shown that they're probably our only good ally. But I'm not running like a lot of representatives to be a TikTok star or a Facebook sensation. I want to represent the people of Western Pennsylvania. I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate you. I know that not all of you agree, but I appreciate the courtesy and the respect of listening to my views. And I really enjoyed this session. Thank you very much.
So instead of winding things down here, I'm actually going to do a little quick fire round for myself, since these are my final remarks, and there are some things that I was disappointed we couldn't get to. So please don't crucify me for any of these. I'll be willing to expand on it at a later date. But just to get this out there, fracking is poisoning our communities, trans rights are human rights. Yeah, no one should be picking on anyone in the bathroom, no matter how you identify. Just want to add more. Anyway, that's all for now.
All right, so one more big round of applause for our candidates this evening. Thank you so much for coming to even if it was not spent, well, this event was bipartisan, so we are so glad that this was able to happen tonight. And to be here for our students, be here for our community. I know Zach wanted to come up and offer a few closing words, but thank you all for letting me moderate.
What he said. No, I do want to echo what Isaac said, thank everyone for coming out. I've been telling myself that either 10 people were going to show up or 50, and we were at just a little under 50, so I appreciate yes, this is what democracy is, listening to people, even if you don't agree with them. And I hope that the college students that were here tonight definitely were able to talk to these people either before or after. Please, this is probably one of the first times that a lot of college students are meeting politicians, and we are the future of this country, and we are going to have to deal with whatever happens in our government for the longest amount of time. So please get involved. You can find all these men on their websites, and they will be happy to talk to you afterwards. Thank you so much. Have a great meeting.